I put together my few notes in isolation down in West Cork, and it's nice to know, that even though we haven't met each other before today, that hopefully some of the thoughts that I have as well will tie in with George's kind of very valuable input, really, and thank you very much for your input. I titled what I'd like to talk about today, I titled it as Prone to the Law. And I titled it that because that is as much as how I feel, it's actually how it is for me as somebody who no longer engages as a service user from the point of view of taking medication or attending an outpatient's department, but has the label of bipolar disorder and cannot shake it off. It is there and I can't get rid of it. So I'd like to share some things about criteria for assessment and criteria for detention and risk assessment. And I suppose what happened to me was, when I was trying to get my head around that, what I couldn't get past was what impacts upon the criteria for detention and risk assessment. And so much so, as George said as well, my own perspective on the law, I was kind of very blessed, really. I had a law lecturer in UCC, and I studied youth and community work, and she insisted very much that we could not study the law as just the law. That in order to be a good youth and community worker, we had to see the law as law, rights and equal opportunities. I'm very, very, very grateful to her for that, because it has forced me to take a more expanded perspective on the law than I would traditionally have just assumed, really. A rights-based approach, perhaps, and one born of equality that supports respect and dignity for people, So much so, actually, she titled the course, Law, Rights and Equal Opportunities. I thank her for that. If I could begin, maybe, by talking about what gets lost before a period of detention. In my own experience, this is my own experience, though it is certainly, I've experienced it with other service users that I've had the privilege of spending time with, and the people that I work with as well. And one of the big ones that went out the window really quickly and really on was self-respect. It went off in the height of my own episode of illness, and it kind of stayed away throughout care and throughout time in hospital and afterwards as well, I rang a friend of mine who's a police officer, a member of Untitled Chapter, and I wanted to ask him, I wanted to try and get a handle, and George alluded to it, something based in common law. So I'd spoken to a friend of mine who'd received a speeding ticket. Of course, I never received one. So they told me the process that they went through and how they came about to receiving a speeding ticket. I rang my buddy then in Untitled Chapter, and he explained to me due process. My friend's experience and due process married up very, very closely, very comparative, pretty much identical, really. And then I racked my brain, and over the 20 years of being in and out of hospitals and in and out of outpatients departments that I've spent as a service user, trying to come up with what knowledge did I have, what knowledge of rights did I have, and I really couldn't come up with any sort of good, solid answer at all. And it was kind of disappointing. To place that in a tighter context, I wanted to give you a couple of instances. An instance of my own last admission to hospital, which it was because I was self-harming. And I self-harmed in a different fashion than I had previously. I'd always kind of been an angry young man and battered walls, and broke bones in my hands, and broke bones in my foot. But this was not happening this time, and I cut myself to bleed, to let the pain out. It's just that nobody ever asked me that. And lo and behold, in my kitchen, in my house, where I share with my wife, my children, one morning I found myself in the presence of 5 members of the police force in stab vests coming to take me away. I just went with them. I really didn't know. Okay, it's serious, I'd better go. Now, I don't mean to be flippant. People were very worried about me at the time. I was sick, undoubtedly. But there was a kind of lack of connect between what I was doing and the response to it. Over the course of that period as well, what they also did was they included my father in the process of my detention. And in that, they went to him, because he's a member, an ex-member of Garda Síochána, and it was his consent or decision that put me in detention. The odd thing about it, and I'm a little bit ashamed to say it, is that due to a lot and due to my mental health, is that I have a very distant relationship with my father. I would be slightly ashamed to say that he doesn't know me very well and I don't know him very well. It's just the way things have worked out over the years. I love him, he's dad, that's okay, we're just not close. But yet, he was the person who made the decision to put me into hospital. That was very difficult. What happened in the course of that process, I suppose, is that a lot of things got lost. There was like a destruction of self that took place. It happened every single time that I went in hospital. There was a loss of self-confidence, there was a loss of self-belief, there was a loss of self-respect, a loss of trust, and a loss of dignity. Not that I was very aware of it, but there was. And what I struggle with around all the criteria for detention and the risk assessment is that I suppose is that I never really felt a part of any of it. Whether capable of making a decision or not, I can never actually recall being invited to be a part of any of it. This is a quote from Dominic Menil, and it's a quote that I really like. It's a quote that I came across some time ago, and it seems to pop up and grab relevance every now and again, and I felt it was relevant today. I found myself in that situation of having to tolerate the intolerable, and that is not unusual. I think anybody that has been held under the Act in some shape or form finishes up tolerating the intolerable, but not even so in many other instances, in a lot broader instances as well. It's a shame, but it does happen. So with that loss of self and that destruction of self that takes place throughout that period of illness and admission, there are other things that fill that gap then, and that get put alongside symptoms. Some may call them symptoms. I would call them things that exacerbate the things that make me ill. And those things then would be the things I would call like pain, confusion, despair, torment. I remember I was in a hospital in America for a while, and I would go to a drop-in centre, and they had a painting on the wall, and it was done by a patient. They call him consumer. It was a consumer actually in America. And it was done kind of in blood reds and blacks, and it was four horsemen, and it was like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, except this person had named them, he or she had named them terror, bewilderment, frustration and despair. And I think that these are very, very apt, that they belong in the presence of a person who has been detained involuntarily and voluntarily, whether they lack decision-making capability or not. I got a phone call from a friend of mine recently, and he said to me, "I've made a fool out of myself, and I'll try to do this quickly, stop me if it isn't clear." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I called somebody because I wanted to talk to them. But he didn't have time, he told me to call my doctor. My doctor said I ought to go to hospital." This was at 10 o'clock at night. My friend said, "I don't want to go to hospital." The doctor said, "I'll call the ambulance." My friend said, "I will cancel the ambulance." That happened 3 times. Eventually the doctor said, "I'm going to call the guards, you're going to have to go to hospital." The guards came to the man's house, got to get in the ambulance. I don't want to get in the ambulance. That's not what this is all about. I was looking for somebody to talk to. We're here now, you must go. I'm not going. He asked them to leave. We can't leave until the doctor comes. The doctor comes. They all sit down. The man sits down, 2 police officers sit down, the doctor sits down, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, the man said, "I'm not going to hospital." And the doctor said to the 2 guards, "There is no more we can do here tonight. I think he'll be okay." And they left. There was a set of criteria for detention to be applied to there in that instance. Good sense prevailed in the very end, but it took 6 hours out of the man's life in the middle of the night when most of us were asleep, and absolutely distressed him. It absolutely distressed the poor guy. There was a risk assessment made. Eventually the doctor said, "You're right, you're okay." And I have no reason to doubt that. And the guy was very appreciative of that decision. But yet, it was all a little bit awkward, to say the least. It was very distressing for my friend. Then to give you an instance of something that happened to us professionally with the team recently, and that is that we were working in conjunction with an individual who is very, very socially isolated. He's isolated societally, he's isolated in the community. He doesn't have any friends or family or supports as we would have in regular life. He became very, very unwell and did not want to go to the hospital. He became so unwell, in fact, that, sceptic as I am, I wished him to go to hospital. I suggested it to him. It would be a safe place to be, get some nutrition into you, get back on your feet. The noise would calm down inside your head. These were thoughts he'd shared with me. Take a break. He did not want to. The thing about it is that I mentioned it to the girl that works with us, she's a nurse as well, and we both recognised that we were his only contact in the community. And who would be there when the man came out of hospital again? Who would be there to pick up the pieces? Were we prepared to destroy a very delicate relationship built purely on trust? We brought our concerns to the MDT, and the community mental health nurse expressed the very, very same concerns. So we put a package together to support the man at home. It was based on local risk assessment. We set up a scenario where he was visited every single day, 7 days a week, between the home focus team, community mental health nurses, and the consultant psychiatrist. Try to engage with the man in his home. So there you have that difference, I think, that George alluded to, between the need to address risk and the need to address care. So the care for the man was taken into account, and I think it's very valid in this instance. When we wrap a rights-based perspective around the Mental Health Act, it throws a different light on it. Article 12 and Article 14, they allow us to kind of view the Act in a much more different way. Article 12, provides persons with disabilities have the right to equal recognition before the law, and Article 14 of the Convention states that the existence of a disability shall in no case justify a deprivation of liberty. That has been expanded upon then into mental health law, that even that the person is a risk to themselves and others. The reason that we say this is because in no other area of life would you be deprived of your liberty because of a risk imposed. I think that's just very interesting, and it's kind of like, why is there not law for all? I agree with you wholeheartedly. I often wonder why we have mental health law. Sorry, it's another. We have one, that's good. There are some of the instances that I've come across in my own life and on a professional basis, and it does nothing really to kind of reassure me, truthfully I suppose, that whatever we do with the act will, in fact how it's reviewed is important, and it's important that it's reviewed, but it's more important in how it is interpreted and used. I had a friend of mine, a solicitor, and I naively said to him one day, at least the law is very black and white. And he said, you're right, and it's my job to find all the grey. And he does. He's very good at his job. And so it is with the Mental Health Act too, I'm afraid. The grey. And I've also had this out with a friend of mine, a psychiatrist. I said to him, but that's black and white, you know, it's the best will, it's the best interest and the will preferences of the patient. He said, yeah, he said, that's exactly what gives us all the grey area we need. I'm really here because I'm so happy to be here as a part of the Experience Advisory Group to Amnesty International. It's a privileged position to be in as a service user, to have a voice, to be able to speak. And I don't take it lightly, I take it very seriously. I take it seriously because I'm in that delicate position of poacher turned gamekeeper. And when I work with the people that I work with, my values and belief stem from being a service user first. I can't help it. I can't put it aside. I'm a professional. I do my job. But what got me the job that I have is that empathic nature that I bring to it. Losing that, that all gets very much lost inside that technical world of risk assessment. And inside that world for criteria for detention, it also gets lost. We may finish up with a due process for criteria for detention, but it's how we make people fit into it. We make people fit into it. You know, round peg, square hole, bigger hammer. And that is the danger. That is the danger. Contrary to that, then, is my own experience. I've had an experience where I was heavily involved with the services for a long, long time, and I am, as I said in the beginning, no longer attending those services nor being treated for a mental health disorder, which I loathe to use the terminology. I just feel that it's really, really important that we hang on to the humanity within the Act. It's really, really hang on to it, that we hold on to that perspective, because mental health, it's so delicate. I see it every day in my work. We're a community-based team. We're in people's homes, and the effort that is made. You know, there's one man that we visit, and the only fire that he lights in the week is the fire he lights when we come to visit him. But yet, he makes that effort for us, and if it's anything to go by, like other people that we work with, he'll finish up lighting the fire for himself and he won't be seeing us anymore. That's the goal or the wish or the end for the work that we do. And that is, and that, not to lose that, not losing that inside and in the technicalities of it all is kind of difficult. But to finish, I'd just like to say that, perhaps just read this for a minute because it makes a lot more sense if I just read it. That I'm here as a person with experience, but why am I here? In the past I've encountered the services and the law, and there's a distinction in that. I don't have too many detailed descriptions of my own admissions, but I can clearly recall how it made me feel. Because long after symptoms had resided, I honestly believe it took a year to begin to get over the shame, the guilt and the fear accompanied by a hospital admission. I'm here because I've come in contact with and used and have been very grateful for the concept of mental health recovery. But it wasn't until I discovered some time back that there are two aspects to mental health recovery. There is clinical recovery, that is those aspects of recovery provided by the service provider. Put something on, you show up to it, you will become well. That is principally what we have in our policy, a vision for change. And then there is personal recovery. Personal recovery is where I will take responsibility for my actions, which I have done to this date, and be autonomous in my decision making. I am not capable of doing that at the moment. I personally am not able to do that at the point. At the last time I was being admitted to hospital, I was not able to do that. Where I was able to do it was beforehand. I was very, very capable. I address my mental health all the time. I am somebody who looks upon my mental health as a habit all the time. It is something that I need to address in order that it doesn't get out of hand. And it is something that I need to take care of and mind, just like I do my physical health. Therefore, I'm here, and I feel the need to be a part of the Amnesty project as well, in order to safeguard that and to work with it. So I don't believe in the lifelong label of bipolar disorder. I and many others live a life of recovery. But what can I recover to when I am always going to be considered guilty until proven innocent? It's there, I cannot help it. If ever my mental health acts up, if ever my mental health acts up again, even though it has been 6 years without any contact with any service, without any contact, without taking any medication, it's still there. It's current, it's in my medical records. I can give you instances to keep you here till 6 o'clock this evening. We won't do that, it's very boring. But it's there, that label, that diagnosis, that stigma. But I do believe very much in a human rights-based approach to the law. I think it's not too far out of our reach to be able to engage with it. And I also believe personally that it's very, very necessary. In personal recovery, the principle of personal responsibility is held to the fore. But no matter how recovered I will ever be, I cannot shake off this label of bipolar disorder. As much as I never talk about it or use it, it is always in my current medical records. And I guess I'm here because I'm prone to the law, as I said at the beginning. I cannot avoid it, get past it. But hopefully that will change. I'm completely inspired by the fact that we have this opportunity to learn from what has happened in England, and to embrace the opportunity that we have with the review of the Mental Health Act and updating our capacity legislation. So on that I'll finish.